Alright, this is Common Sense because nobody else has it. This is my guest, Nathaniel Schaefer.
Pleasure.
James Edwards, coming out of Rockport, New York. So, since the last time we filmed, actually, the day we filmed, right after I got done filming, and I was talking with Jamie about the protests and everything going on in Rochester. There was a press conference with the mayor and the police chief and one of the Rochester city elders, and they had decided that night they were gonna bust in city elders to kind of be a deterrent between the police and the protesters.
City elders?
Like the churches and whatnot.
Huh.
So,
I mean, I live there and I don't pay enough attention to know this, so.
I'm watching this and I'm just thinking this cannot go good. And sure enough, I mean, there was members of city council in the protest that night too. Sure enough, they got gassed and pepper sprayed and rubber bulleted. And then the next day, the police chief resigns, and they're still protesting like every single day until the mayor resigns.
In Rochester?
Yeah, which I totally agree with, because like I was talking about with Jamie, she's being investigated right now for a super PAC. Back when she was in her last election, blocking her opponents from gaining contributions, and there's all sorts of evidence on her right now. She's gonna probably end up appearing in court, being tried.
Well, I don't really have a favorable opinion of her, but the only thing I think was her doing that I know about was she opposed some sort of tax on businesses who had storefront seating, so like the outside seating in front of the stores, so pizzerias and bars.
Yeah.
You had to pay even more to have seats outside near the sidewalk.
Every bar and almost every bar, restaurant in Rochester.
Yeah. Anywhere, but I don't know. I don't know much about my own mayor there, so.
Yeah, she's same as any other politician right now, pretty much. As crooked as can be. Which, you know what really surprises me is every time I watch these videos of the protests, the people commenting, like these people are fucking insane, dude. People are nuts. Like the last video I was watching, the protest from the other day, they ended up getting arrested outside the courthouse for blocking it off. There's some lady commenting on there saying there's going to be a race war and like everybody needs to protect themselves and like what?
I agree with the second sentiment. Everybody does need to protect themselves.
The race war thing, I commented back and I was like, all right, Charles Manson. You need to relax. I couldn't believe some of the things that people are commenting on there. Like telling people like, oh, you can go get jobs, go home, why are you protesting? What are you doing? Like this is terrible. Like if you go back through history and you go to the civil rights movement, if you go back to 1776. The colonists protested the British, the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah.
The Boston Tea Party, there was things destroyed, you know, there was property damage. People were injured. People are upset. That's why this is happening. These precedents have already been set since the beginning of our country. You know, our first president took part in these protests at one point.
Yeah, he was a general, but the precedent was also set to protect the property of the individual. So, granted, the Tea Party, I'm fairly certain, targeted a company, an English company.
I believe it was the East India Trading Company.
But you're never going to be on the side of the law if you're destroying something. You never are. regardless of how just or unjust your cause.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an attention grabber. Like, if you go and get a permit and you go and you protest and you follow all their rules and everything else, you're not inconveniencing anyone. You're not going to be heard. They're not going to care. You're like, okay, there's a bunch of people out there with signs, and eventually they'll go away, or we'll stop giving them permits and stop letting them protest, or it'll just be silenced, and then everything will just keep on going on the way it is. I've been listening to a lot of Eric Weinstein lately, and he talks about how there needs to be he thinks there needs to be a revolution. Thomas Jefferson said it'd be healthy for a country to have a revolution every 200 years to weed out corruption.
I think it was a lot less than that, actually. It was something ridiculous, like 50 or 20, I think. But I'd rather not see it go that far.
Yeah, I would. I mean, revolution in the streets, chaos. I've been saying that a lot lately, too. If you gave everybody just 2 weeks of anarchy, just 2 weeks of anarchy, and people can really get to see how the world actually is, and how people really are, how cruel and evil people can actually be. Because those are going to be the people, 2 weeks of anarchy, those are the people that are going to just step up and just take over.
Well, that 2 weeks of anarchy is a pretty good argument for a militaristic police force.
And I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, the government shut down, wasn't around, just took off, and just gave everybody 2 weeks of just complete lawlessness.
Ultimately, that depends on the individual, but I think, and I'm going to step off the ledge here, but I don't think America needs laws to begin with. There's an idea of progression of ideas. You abstract something first before you can articulate it, and I think that laws were the abstraction of rights. If the people adhere to a social contract that recognizes rights of an individual, you don't need the law. Because the rights in and of themselves guarantee the safety of the person's property, their livelihood, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
See, that's basically no laws.
I mean, I'm a radical for that. I
Yeah,
get that,
I mean, that's a form of anarchy, I would feel like.
I don't know, because anarchy doesn't respect authority, and whatever you would call that I just spoke would respect the authority of the one as all. The individual is supposed to always come first.
I feel like that's what they tried to do with communes. Like hippie communes.
Yeah, but they appropriate property.
Yeah, they share everything.
Nobody's allowed to have private property in.
Yeah, everything's shared, and I think even in some instances, like women and everything are shared. There's no marriages or exclusiveness.
How lovely does that sound?
Yeah. Yeah, it just goes in for the night, Just be here, fucking hanging out.
If there's no, my brother told me a little bit about a commune that he stopped into, and the problem that it sounds like with things like that is there's no proper management if there's no ownership. The power would go out all the time. Nobody's going to be the hero that does all the dishes. Fucking stupid shit like that.
Well, that's my problem with socialism and communism, because there's no need to compete. So if everybody just does the bare fucking minimum, they're gonna get paid the same anyway, and there's no true progression. There's no actual.
Right, and people die.
Yeah,
because there's not enough.
There's no competition. I mean, Charles Darwin, I think he was a fucking idiot. I can't stand listening to like Charles Darwin shit. Fucking.
Well,
he was racist and prejudiced and fucking
I never gave him much creed when he said that the people of my heritage were the N-word of the white race. So I don't know.
Yeah,
anything
he said that
him.
about the Irish, and yeah, I mean that's whatever. The dude's an asshole, but
Implicit.
what I do agree with him about is the survival of the fittest. The strong survive. And that's why I can't stand when people talk about toxic masculinity. Like, that is the biggest joke I've ever heard my entire life. Toxic masculinity has gotten the human race this far.
Well, it's not toxic.
Yeah, it's not toxic. It's men. I was talking about this the other night. Men and women are definitely, they're different in the sense that if you go back to like basic survival standards, primal instinct, a woman is generally going to be more emotional because if something was to happen
They're the
to the
caretaker.
family, yeah, they're the caretaker. They have to be nurturing. They have to be calming. They have to be the one to handle that. Whereas the man would have to stand up and fight and protect his family and his shelter and everything else. And people still have those primal instincts. Those never went away. They're in the back of your brain. That's how people survive. So there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. You're masculine. You're a man.
There's vice and there's virtue. You know, there's good and bad, and you can pick between.
Yeah, I mean, you can be a man. You can be a rough, buff construction worker. You know,
But as long as
banging ladies and doing, drinking and fighting and whatever, but you could be a totally nice, good guy. You don't have to be a fucking asshole just because you're a big tough guy,
Yeah, and I don't think, although perhaps maybe one gender is more prone to certain vices than the other, and vice versa, but there is no gendered evil. There's no racial evil. There's none of that. This absolutism when it comes to different group identities of people is totally asinine.
Yeah, you can't just generalize a group of people. I mean, physically, groups of people have different characteristics. Like, you can tell when someone's Irish or Italian or Jamaican or African, or you can normally by looking at someone you can tell, their genealogy, where they came from.
Yeah, varying degrees, but that doesn't make you.
Personality-wise, though, I think you can't do that. You can't just judge a whole.
Right. What you look like has almost nothing to do with your character.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, where you come from, you are a product of your environment, no matter what. You can break that, though.
Yeah, I'm always a proponent of will over nature, whatever, nurture-nature argument. I don't think will is given enough creed.
I don't think most people have that will, that free will, to just do. I say that all the time. The rich are rich because they understand that you can do whatever you want. You can do anything. Like, literally. It doesn't matter what it is, you can do it. And whether it's illegal or not, I mean, there'll always be some, and there might not be a consequence, but there are supposed to be consequences for certain actions, but you can do whatever you want. There's nothing to stop me. There's nothing to stop me from going out and shooting 3 people,
Right. The only reason there's consequences in the civic sense is because we've agreed on them. But even so, with the sacrifice of free will, I suppose I'll call it, you've got the consequence of your conscience. That's a whole nother realm.
Well, your conscience and morals and stuff like that generally are based off of how you were raised and who you were raised by and where you were raised. I've definitely broken through all of that and just started to figure out everything else on my own. I mean, I'm not. Where we're from is the people there are fucking crazy. It's insane. I can't even believe it sometimes. Like, some of the people I used to hang out with and like share ideas with. It's ridiculous. Like
Oh,
very close-minded. I find a lot.
yeah.
Very ignorant. You don't have to talk shit about everybody, but that's just an observation that I've made.
Well, yeah, that's I guess the point of learning. We all hold our own prejudice and our own ignorance. It's the willingness to try to find and confront that within yourself is, I think, what defines good in a person, or the start, anyways, the pursuit of it.
Yeah, you gotta figure it out on your own. I think everybody really does, because I don't think I've ever seen one single community that has ideals and morals and an upbringing for people that creates a generally just good person. That creates, I think there's, as a whole, they're too flawed. You got to kind of break that system and figure out what's right.
Yeah, it's got to be individualistic. You can't blanket solution anything. But I'd say there are certain things that might be a good idea to protect, like the sanctity of the family. Although not all families are good things too. But everything has to come down to the individual. And if the individual won't decide for themselves, nobody can.
Yeah, I don't know, that's why I kind of just been struggling lately with, not even really struggling, I just don't believe in either side of the politics, red, blue, whatever. I think that's shaped a lot of people too, and totally divided this country, and they're both fucking wrong. Like the conservatives have the family ideals a lot, and they, which I totally agree with. I think, and I agree with nationalism to a point. You gotta support your country and everybody around you.
Definitely.
I tell people all the time, your country isn't your government. It's the people you live with. It's your friends. It's your family. It's your home. It's the land you live on. It's not your government.
Well, you brought up Washington earlier, and one of his warnings is actually, I think, the very thing that's so goddamn wrong with our government. He warned us against political parties. And because we have them, we vote for somebody else's idea. A representative is always somebody who comes in and represents the ideas that they bring with them. They're never somebody who goes to the people. You don't. Whenever you cast a vote, you're voting for whatever the other person says.
Yeah, and like Teddy Roosevelt he got kicked off the Republican ticket in 1913 when he ran because he didn't have completely conservative ideals. And he's our only independent president ever to win an election.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was Googling it the other day. He's our only independent, or not independent, only third party. My bad. Only third party ticket to ever, because he just created his own party after that. And he's the only third party to ever win an election. Our only independent president to ever win an election
Was Washington.
was George Washington.
Yeah, our only good president, in my opinion. But
Yeah, I mean, he
was the only one who didn't want to be there, and that speaks volumes.
So Washington's actually a really interesting president because Washington, not a lot of people know. Well, I mean, a lot of people know Washington as a Freemason, and a lot of people know Washington and Franklin, and a lot of those guys were Freemasons. What they don't know is that Washington has journals or letters that he had written about being in Freemason, where he talks about how he fears that the Illuminati has infiltrated the Freemasonry Brotherhood, and then further goes on to state that he fears that they've infiltrated the leadership, and that they're going to take over the Freemasons.
Well, that's something I know nothing about. I don't know anything about the Masons or the Illuminati outside of what most people regard as just bullshit. But
Well, the Illuminati and the Freemasons are both real secret societies, and if nobody knows the Illuminati for a fact is still around today, but the Freemasonry Brotherhood is still around today.
I know the Masons are real.
You can see their temples all over the all over the United States, everywhere. So the Masons came from. They're believed to have come from the Knights Templar after the Pope and the King of England turned on the Templar and hunted them down and had the leaders burned on Friday the 13th. That's why Friday the 13th is Friday the 13th, is because that's when the leaders of the Templar were burned at the stake.
Was that for worshiping Baphomet or something else? Because I know the Templars turned to
because
Baphomet.
they had found some sort of treasure while they were fighting in the Crusades. I mean, that the conspiracy with that is that they had found the Ark of the Covenant underneath Old Solomon's Temple. And what there is factual information of is that when all of the Templar found that were persecuted and imprisoned, all had a significant amount of gold on them. Gold coins and jewelry and trinkets, and they all had a wealth. So it's believed that the Templar that escaped formed the Freemasons and eventually found their way here to the United States and helped in the founding of
I'm going to play the skeptic,
America.
I suppose, and say, couldn't they have also acquired wealth from sacking Jerusalem during the First Crusade?
Oh yeah, they could have definitely gotten their wealth from sacking Jerusalem and fighting Saladin. Saladin, however you pronounce it. So it could have been. The conspiracy is that they found a vast treasure underneath Old Solomon's Temple where the Ark of the Covenant's last location was supposed to be, and they found the Ark of the Covenant, and which is super interesting because it goes into, like, I watched the Curse of Oak Island a lot with the Money Pit up in Canada.
I've heard bits about that. I don't know.
So a lot of the stuff they found on the island, they found a lead cross. The lead they found geographically traced back to a mine in France around the time of the Crusades, and they found a picture of it, a cross that looked exactly like this one. You know, it's not just a basic little cross; it's a handmade lead cross. So they found a picture of a cross that looked exactly like that in a prison where Templar would have been held. And they found all sorts of other things that would lead to believe that the Templar were active on that island. They found bone fragments from people of European and Middle Eastern descent when they were core digging. So like if they did bury the Ark, like if that is buried there, that would be pretty crazy. But that's the Freemasons. Now the Illuminati.
I could, just for a split second, the only thing I could assume, I'll just hypothetically say all that's true, the only reason I could assume that they would do that, if all of that is true, is to keep the Ark from the Vatican.
Oh yeah, they definitely didn't want the Vatican. They definitely didn't want the Vatican to have the Ark. They wouldn't want anyone to find the Ark. Whatever's on that island is so well booby-trapped and so well hidden. People put like $1 million into finding it at one point. The guys doing it now they own oil rigs. They're billionaires. And they core dig, and that's what they do, and that's what they've been doing on the island and looking for it. And they found a lot of stuff, a lot of information. They found a Roman pylon, which would be basically a spearhead.
Okay.
So I was thinking that could be part of some sort of treasure or something that somebody brought there. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely super interesting. They're getting closer and closer to finding it. They found a piece of parchment too that says it's got, like, the old school medieval books, how they have the giant letter at the top of the page to start the sentence. That's
I've
like,
always seen fairy tales structured that way.
yeah, stuff like, it's very popular in medieval times, and they found a piece of parchment where it looks to be like the top corner of one of those big fancy letters. When they record digging, it had some water damage to it because at one point somebody tripped a booby trap that flooded seawater into the pit, and they put ink in it to find out where the seawater was coming from, and the ink came up into the ocean around the whole island. And then they've since found one of the drainage tunnels that leads into where the money pit is. So they're closer than ever to finding it. But every time they go to find it, every time they get close, something happens. A cave in, or it's pretty. The one son died of like a mysterious illness on the island. He just died, got a mysterious illness and died. Like it's pretty weird stuff. But that's the Templars, and that's the Masons. That's where the Masons came from. They came from Europe, and believed to have come from the Knights Templar, and just their group of Masons that founded it. Stonemasons.
Your pylon, I don't know if you would know this off the top of your head. That comment, do we know where the spear is? The Spear of Destiny, as it's been dubbed?
No, I mean, that's something that, like the Holy Grail, there's tons of stuff, like religious artifacts. Like, there was that one cup that everybody was like, they were letting people drink out of it. It's supposed to be the Holy Grail, and people would like bite chips of it off of it with their teeth while they were drinking out of it to keep part of it. So they stopped letting people, it's like whittled down to it. But it's supposedly the Holy Grail. If it's, in fact, all even real. So then the Illuminati would have been, the Illuminati were also persecuted by the church, like the Templar. But they were persecuted because they were a group of scientists and philosophers, and when the church was killing scientists and philosophers for their viewpoints and trying to teach people, facts and give people new ideas. And so they formed a secret society so that they could share ideas and still live and do what they do, and had an underground structure. And they eventually fought against the church. They went just underground, went missing. But Washington writes about them, stating he believes that they had taken over the Freemasons. This is at the beginning of the country. So if that's in fact true, imagine what it could be now, and all the Freemasons that have been involved in government and everything else since then.
I don't know. Would seem like a pretty grim prospect for the will of the people.
It's pretty. I mean, a lot of people say there couldn't be no such thing as a New World Order, no giant conspiracy, blah, 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 blah,
COVID proved that wrong.
but empires and churches and everything else have proved that wrong throughout history. The Vatican, look at the Vatican. That's a giant conspiracy. They have cover-ups and histories of murder and running the world.
Yeah.
At one point, all the kings of Europe listened to the Vatican.
Well, I don't think theocracy should be allowed in America. I know we have the freedom of religion, but a theocracy, like the Catholic Church, is one of the two big ones that are here. They answer to a separate power.
Well, I think the American Catholic Church is separate. It's separate from the Vatican.
It better be.
I'm 95% positive the American Catholic Church is separated from the Vatican. They have no ties to each other. But you definitely have to keep religion and politics separate, like it's intended in the Constitution. We have freedom of religion, but I mean, a lot of people argue that this country was founded on Christianity. It was founded by Christian leaders, and I just think it's to a point where that all needs to be kept separate. I don't know, like the Bible, it's funny, the Wu-Tang has that song, Bible, Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. And I think that's what it really is, like, intended for. I think it was just a book of stories, I mean, that would get people to do the right thing, you know, give everybody a basic set of morals. And almost even scare them into it. And to just being a good person. I think a long time ago, we really devolved humans really needed something like that.
Yeah, I agree with the premise, although I would argue, just personally being a Christian, I suppose, is part of my bias here. Semantically, there's nothing basic about the morality presented in the Bible, but two, even beyond our bestial nature, which I think we can will to overcome, there's other things that are necessary. Because I don't think, like everything in front of us right now, this table, everything was an abstraction from something that we had already seen. So there's the philosophy that led to making that can that you just drank out of was something that I wish we could trace, but I doubt we'd ever be able to understand. And it's the root of ideas that Christianity provides is, or I should say the Bible provides, is beyond measure.
What do you mean?
Look at Jesus. We have, at the surface level, you have a charitable man who stands up for what is right to the point of being killed by the state.
Yeah, I mean, and there's archaeological evidence that proves Jesus was a real person. There's archaeological evidence from Rome. There's records and.
But then the mechanic that he uses to do that, as part of his own philosophy and the idea of virtue, was he was honest. He was presented as the ultimate truth, the Son of God.
Right.
So the truth is the thing that man is supposed to aim for as the premise of Christianity, biblically speaking.
Okay. I think I get what you're saying. I don't know. If you look into it, if you read it, if you read the book, if you read the Bible, it is a lot of it is just how to be a good person. And it gets rid of I think it tackles a lot of gray areas too, which I think people's morals and understanding of what's right and wrong have become a lot better.
Definitely, I would agree. We have progressed.
But I think gray areas are something that gray areas are something that as a society we still struggle with, for sure. Moral gray areas are they're difficult for people to tackle. I think that's why you see a lot of what you see going on today in the country, is because people don't know how to handle it. That and people trying to push, that's the other thing, like, that's why I disagree with a lot of atheists too. I disagree with a lot of atheists. I disagree with a lot of that stuff, because everybody wants to push everything on everyone. You can't push your morals on other people. You can't say you have to do this. Just like atheists, they're like, oh, you believe in some fucking silly sky god, like blah 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 blah, and immediately attack anybody who has any sort of spirituality or religion at all. And even Christians and people of other religions are like, oh, this is my religion. You need to believe it too. You're gonna burn in hell. You're gonna you're gonna do this. You're gonna do that. Something bad will happen to you because you don't believe in this. I think that's all of that is just utterly ridiculous. People need to just leave people alone and let them be free to do what they want to do, man.
Yeah, the discussion of an idea versus the push, I don't have a better word for it off the top of my head, is what we need. Every people group that you could surmise is guilty of that.
It's a balance of freedom, total free will, doing what you want, and someone ensuring that you're doing the right thing, and doing what you're supposed to be doing, and not fucking things up. Like it's definitely a balance, and I think that balance is kind of offset towards more control, more pushing people's morals, pushing people's beliefs, pushing more and more laws on people, and making sure people are doing the right thing. You have to have a sort of trust. Other people are they're not gonna want to do that if they don't feel free. People like having a choice. And I feel normally if you give a person a choice, if they have a good set of morals already, then they're going to do the right thing just because they have a choice. I think as soon as you strip that choice, it becomes a lot more difficult. A lot more people are going to say, well, I'm not doing that because you're making me.
There's something else that I wanted to hit on back a ways in what you were saying, but in the immediate, if I may make a semantic argument, I think there's a problem with the framing, the way that people even speak of these things, because we've been trained to be a system, a unit in a system, rather than an individual. You said giving somebody a choice. We need to acknowledge that everyone has a choice. It's never to be given, simply accepted that yes, each and every one of us has the choice to be good. Each and every one of us has the choice to be evil in every single circumstance. That's the point of the Bible when it talks about working out your own faith with fear and trembling. It's the truth of good and evil and your relationship to it in every choice you make. That's something, that is an unbearable weight that is on every human being that has ever drawn breath. And as soon as everybody, which probably maybe will never happen, can acknowledge and accept that, we stand to have a discussion like this, where we can actually perhaps persuade somebody. But even in our conversations, there's another tool, if you will, that we have to use, and that's acknowledging the ideas that aren't our own. I've already said a few things that I agree with that are not my ideas, that I hold.
Yeah.
A lot of people hold someone else's idea as though it was their own, and they live the life that somebody else laid out for them, believing that they chose it. And in a sense, they chose to do that, but their decisions are predicated on another person's thought. And I think that's also the sin of grieving the Holy Spirit.
Well, Frank Zappa said, if you leave that's not an exact quote, but it was something like, if you lead a boring life because you listen to your parents and your teachers and your priest, and then it's your own fault. It's basically what he said. It's your own time wasted. So I think you definitely have to. That's the freedom I'm talking about. I mean, the sharing of ideas is what's gotten us the ability to even share ideas. We're the only creature on the planet that really does that to the point we do that. And so, like, the ability to share ideas has gotten us this far. Sharing ideas is great, but sharing ideas is also, especially when people believe in the wrong thing, and people, more often than not, when people are forced to believe something, the sharing of ideas becomes a problem.
And that's why we need it public. Every idea, good or bad.
Yeah, it needs to be. That's why I support candidates running independently, based on their own thoughts and ideas, and not backed by a party or a ticket. I mean, people are going to share ideas and ideals with you for sure, and you'll have a backing, and that's why people have popularity.
That's fair.
So that's going to happen regardless. But I think it makes it a lot easier. I think it would let people see through a lot of the bullshit. You know, if you came out and you weren't just saying something because that's what your party agrees with, or that's what the people voting for you agree with, if you come out and just say what you actually believe, that weeds out so much nonsense.
Right, but in a hypothetical, were I to run for a public office, I already know what my platform would be. It's simply, I would probably state all the things that I agree with morally, but then my platform would just be, I'm going to ask you. I'm not coming with my ideas because I'm not here to represent me.
No.
I need your ideas. You're the people who live here. What do you need?
Yeah, I think a lot of people there's so many people that are just out of touch with the common American. The shows I watch, and even on YouTube and TV, and listening to these politicians, they have no fucking idea what we go through, what we're going through day to day. That's why I think, like my last show, like I had like 200 views in like 3-4 days, which like just for me sharing it just one time, like I think is a lot. I think it's because people want to hear from the common folk. People like listening to people, like they like being able to relate, you know. And I don't think any of these people can relate to us. I think there's such a broad spectrum in our class system. I think it's so separated between poor, middle class, and rich that everybody is just completely out of touch.
I can't say that I know, but I think that I would agree with that from what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a basic observation of mine that, rich people have no idea what we go through day to day. It's like they hear stories and they're like, "Oh my God, that could never happen. No way, really?" Or their solutions are, things are just completely unattainable, and like it's definitely
One great example of that is the whole structure of grants for, say, schools. You have to meet whatever your budget is in order to get the grant again.
right.
If you're spending money for a school district, which draws money from us. There's no enforcement on efficiency. That's just one small, big example, I guess. If I can use a oxymoron, I suppose, sort of. Of the disassociation. We're not an infinite resource. We're not a resource.
Yeah, people run out of money. People only make so much money, and everything only inflates because of this bubble economy that we're trapped in. We've been trapped in tons of bubble economies before. And the thing about a bubble economy is just like any other bubble, it pops.
Yeah.
And you go into a recession, or even worse, a depression, and it's just bound to happen again. We're in this humongous bubble economy right now. It's not backed by really anything. It's just it's a farce, really. It's gonna pop. People are gonna realize. I mean,
Weird system of debt that's constructed on the principle of debt.
so I think going back to the very beginning here, and with all the protests that are going on right now, everybody's sick of being censored, everybody's sick of being treated unfairly, everybody's sick of things being covered up. Save Our Children, Epstein didn't kill himself, are still huge all over the internet. The American people know Epstein didn't kill himself. The American people have been educated on this and have even followed it a little bit, it's disgusting that it's even been covered up for that long. That it even got thrown away the way it did in Florida. And I think once this bubble economy pops, the middle class aren't going to be. They're not going to be so middle class anymore.
No.
And
you got to separate the elite from the.
It's going to be the rich and the
Serfs.
poor again, like it has, numerous other times throughout American history. Even more so in the past, probably 80 years. It's happened, 100 years even.
So I got a question kind of related to that, because I haven't found a satisfactory answer, and I suppose this is just more for speculation, but is money property?
I mean, technically, money would be government property. Just like land, like you own land, but you pay tax on that land, and the government can take it from you at any point in time. It's not really your land; it's the government's land. You're kind of renting it from them.
So what is property? If land and money isn't?
Material possessions would what I would describe as property. That's the only thing that you can really own in this country. Like I could say, this phone is mine, or this fucking bong is mine, or these cigarettes are mine because I paid for them. And I went out and acquired that. That's the only thing you can really own is.
I would make the argument that land should be private property, and I believe it's considered it legally. However, issues of public domain like that philosophically.
Well, the government can just come in if they want to put a highway or something else like that, and the government can just come and buy your land.
Yeah.
And take it from you and make you move. So it's not
pretty fucked.
It's not really yours. It's you're renting from them basically, and just like a landlord, the government can do what they want with that land at any point in time. They can strip it from you. If you owe, they can remove you. Or
well, money is the
sell
translation essentially of time to the ability to acquire property, right?
Yeah.
It's our attempt at measuring the worth of whatever you're doing, so that you can work to buy a house, or work to buy a car, or work to buy food, or whatever. So, I just lost my train of thought. If your money is a representation of your time, that at least in New York is taxed as you get it, but money is owned by the government, just going off of what you said, that would make us slaves.
Yeah, essentially that would, our time is paid for by the government every day, and our time is paid for by the government every day, and yeah, they have all the control over us. They tax your time at work. Like I talked to pay for World War I or World War II. That's why income tax was put into place. All right, so yeah, to go further on that, yeah, essentially, I think we are slaves. We trade our time for money, and we use that money to spend on things that aren't really ours. The money's not really ours. The land isn't really ours. The only thing we can own are material possessions. And the amount of money they take from us is ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah.
Zach, what's the amendment about unfair fines?
I'm gonna find it.
And it's ridiculous. I have to pay to go to work. Like I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars taken out of my paycheck. For what? An educational system that really needs a total reform. It's completely ridiculous.
It's Amendment 8.
The 8th Amendment, what is it?
Excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor too cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. That's the only one.
So that's violated daily by
Yeah.
That amendment of the Constitution is violated daily. The Eighth Amendment by the New York State government. That's just one example of how that amendment is violated. It's violated daily by multiple government agencies, state and federal. People are fucking pissed, dude, and they're only going to get more and more pissed off if they don't see some sort of mass change.
Well, the other thing to be pissed off about is the idea of numbering the Constitution. Amendment 9 talks about the enumeration of the Constitution shall not be taken to deny or disparage other rights held by the people. And we're sold any other conceivable possible right that we might have through licensing. Like, granted, New York fucking sucks anyways, but in other mildly more constitutional states, if I want to carry a gun and conceal it, I have to pay for that.
Yeah. Which is ridiculous. You have a right to bear arms. People are allowed to carry guns around.
If I'm hungry, like I was doing, however I did it legally, much to my own woe, but I was fishing for a while and eating what I was catching. If I didn't go out and buy the right to fish, then I would have been breaking the law to feed myself.
Well, the fishing license, from my understanding, they take the money from those fishing licenses, and that's why we have great fishing all over the state. They take that money and they use it to restock ponds, lakes, areas that fish get killed throughout the winter, and or areas that are fished frequently. They use all that money and they turn it around and they put it right back into the environment. Same with the hunting licenses and things like that. Your tags, they take all that. The state takes a portion of that money, yes, but the rest of it all goes back into the environment. So we have good fishing and we have good hunting and we have the park systems that we have in New York.
All right, but why can't that be through philanthropy? I'm saying that right?
What do you mean, like through selling stuff?
No, donation. If all the fishermen, all the big fishermen, I live with one who's an avid fisherman, and he's all for the licensing practices because of the conservation aspect that you were just mentioning.
Yeah.
I get that that's there, but all these people that do it, all the time, professionally, they love doing it, and they love all the aspects of it. I'm sure if you ask them, instead of mandating this, you guys want to donate to a program or make your own? There's, in my opinion, never an instance where the government does something better than the private citizen.
I guess to a point. I mean, essentially your license there is a donation. That, everybody just,
It's a mandatory
$25.
one.
Yeah, it's a mandatory donation, for
And
sure.
if you don't pay that and you're caught exercising that and having not paid it, you pay a fuck ton more.
Yeah, they violate your Eighth Amendment and give you an unfair fine. Ridiculous fine. They violate your Eighth Amendment right there. I guess that should have been more specified.
What do you mean?
I think they should have probably broadened the Eighth Amendment. It's a real short, one sentence long. They should have touched more on that. What an unfair fine is because apparently.
Well, $20 is mentioned in the civil cases.
Well, I would love to pay $20 for a fine.
It was a categorization, but I don't remember what. For if it exceeds $20 something, I don't remember how it's worded.
Well, it's because New York State's up everybody's ass right now about money too. I've been seeing state troopers all over the place. Be careful when you're driving. because they're trying to give out tickets left and right. They're just trying to make up for. I got pulled in for a couple fines I owe from a few years ago. A few other people I know got pulled in for fines that they owe. They're just trying to make back all this money from everything they're doing, and it's all New York City, really. The whole state's messed up. I love living here, but like New York City is what 6-7 hours from us. It should not. New York City should not dictate. Their economy should not dictate what I pay in taxes and stuff like that. Because if it didn't, it would be so much lower. It'd be so much cheaper and easier to live here.
Yeah.
Our economy here would flourish.
If money was property, tying back to that, we wouldn't be slaves to pay off somebody else's debt.
Yeah, that too. That's my big problem. That's another big problem of mine with socialism and communism. Everybody pays for everybody else's stuff.
I heard a quote, I think it was Tim Pool, who said, somebody else's labor cannot be a right. And he was specifically talking about medicine and housing. Because it requires the work of somebody else, you cannot be guaranteed it as a right. And I think that is an excellent principle to stand by, even though those are two hot topics. It's not, you can't force me and you to pay for somebody else. You shouldn't be able to.
No, I have a hard time paying for myself sometimes. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people do. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. There needs to be, and I think that's why there are so many crazy bad people out there talking about revolution. I don't know. Weinstein, I think, is like Eric Weinstein. There, he's got that show, The Portal.
Is he the mathematician?
Yeah, he's the mathematician.
Okay.
Mathematician, economist. He's educated in physics, I think, as well. I think he's one of the smartest guys in America right now. He's probably one of the smartest guys I've ever heard talk. Most intelligent, most educated. Somebody the other day started an argument with me that said that your institutionalized education is what I call it, but says that your education on like how far you've gone in school is a measurement of your intelligence.
Yeah, I added
Let's make Trish
Sorry. Sorry, guys. I had to laugh.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It's a kind of a poor example because of how smart he was, how intelligent he was, but Albert Einstein dropped out of high school, never went to college, ends up working on the Manhattan Project and helped build the nuclear bomb to end World War II.
Steve Jobs.
Theory of relativity. Steve Jobs is another good example. That's like saying that your IQ is how smart you are. Like it's ridiculous. Your IQ is your capacity to learn. And I believe that your IQ is only going back to free will again. Your IQ is only your capacity to learn at that point in time when you take that test. I think your IQ definitely has the ability to change. The human mind we know more about the oceans than we do the human mind, and we know less about the oceans than we do space. So the human mind is one of the most understudied and unidentified things out there. One of the most mysterious things on the planet, and that's why they're like.
Yeah, it's damn near impossible because you can't take a privileged look at it. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but you can't look at your own source code.
Yeah,
it's
you
impossible.
can't just dissect it, and so that's what Weinstein is. His whole life goal is actually trying to figure out the human source code.
Yeah. Human intelligence is a mental quality that consists of the abilities to learn from experience, adapt to new situations, understand and handle abstract concepts, and the use of knowledge to manipulate one's own environment.
That is the definition of human intelligence. It has nothing to fucking do with going to school. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. I listen to way smarter people than these college professors talk every fucking single day, all
I
day
bet that
long.
person has a certificate.
Yeah. A golden certificate they got out of a chocolate bar. Fucking is about what that's worth to me.
Hey, I wouldn't mind a chocolate factory run by Oompa Loompas.
Hey, we all want to be Willy Wonka.
It's fucking nonsense. So that's the human mind. You can expand your IQ, you can expand your intelligence, you can train your own mind to do whatever you want. You can break whatever habit you want just with the sheer willpower. Like, I've done it before myself, just broken a habit, just been like, nope, and just not done it anymore, or just had a new train of thought just because I willed it in my own brain. A lot of people don't. A lot of people can't think like that. A lot of people, and I don't think it's that they can't think like that. I think it's that they're ignorant to it.
Yeah, because there's like everything human, there's two sides to the coin. You're just as much as you're both logical and abstract, you're also impulsive and disciplined.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely not an easy task. It's not for. I mean, I don't think there's any excuse to be weak-willed at all. I think that it's all in your head. Like it really is. Every action is yours. Every choice is yours. Every thought is yours. It's not. You can just tell your brain to fuck off. You know. You can just say nope. I disagree. Consciously do that.
You can, yeah.
And just make whatever choice you want. And a lot of people just listen to their brain just because. And they go back to instincts or habits that aren't always necessarily good. The human brain is insane. Like,
Because you're capable of shutting it off and you're capable of maintaining it.
so I've been trying to figure this out lately. I was thinking about this a few weeks back, and then I actually researched it, and I found a kid. There's this kid. He's like a child prodigy. He's a coder, and he can code stuff in his sleep. He doesn't do it consciously though. Like, he doesn't purposely do it. It just happens. So my whole theory before I even saw that was that I used to be able to like control my dreams, just go to sleep, and as I was going to sleep, I would just think about what I wanted to dream about, and then in my dream, it would be like a super vivid dream, and I was in total control. I could make whatever I want appear. I could do whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted, and fucking. I mean, I was only like 16, so it was like mostly just boobs, but. You know, but the point is that you can just fucking who doesn't want to see a nice pair of tits, you know? Fucking the point is that you can control your dreams. I've talked to other people that can do it too. So I was thinking, like, what if while you were dreaming, you could do math, or you could like work on something that you were like knowledgeable about when you were awake. You could practice something and fortify it in your brain, so that you would never have to waste a moment of your time. You could do all this while you're sleeping, and then like when you wake up, it's still there. My thought was to get to the point where I can control my dreams again, you know, be able to vivid dream and do what I want in them, and then do like a basic math problem, solve it in my dream, and see if I remember it when I wake up. If you could do that, you could even go on to the next step and practice, like, if you're like a martial artist or something, you know? Or some other sort of motor skill you could practice while you're dreaming the skill. Practice it, reinforce it, and see if it betters your skill, or fortifies your skill in real life.
Doubtful of motor skills, however, concept drafting and information-wise, I don't see why, if you have dominance over your dreams, I don't see why you couldn't do that. But I don't know about motor skills. It'd be an interesting experiment, though.
Right, just to see, just not, like, it wouldn't be a muscle memory, but it would be a kind of, like, you know how you're, like, so when I'm laying block or I'm laying brick, in my head, I'm thinking about what I'm doing as I'm, you know, as I'm feathering my mud, as I'm spreading my mud down the block, as I'm fucking laying it in and tapping my brick into place or tapping my block in place. I'm thinking about what I'm doing that whole time. So what if you just fortified the thought process of that to make it even easier, which would fortify your muscle memory in a way too. Just to be able to advance, you know, whatever skill it is.
The levels of human intelligence include instinct, intuition, prescience, and natural knowledge. Innate instinct is the innate aspect of behavior, a strong impulse, a natural capability or aptitude. Intuition is knowing without the use of natural process, and otherwise known as acute insight. Prescience is the knowledge of things before they exist or happen. It's also known as just straight foresight. And innate knowledge is skills learned through experience or from learning through books or other means.
And we seem to focus solely on the last one.
Yeah, intelligence comes from all sorts of things. The ability to train your mind, the ability to do, you know, the ability to learn new things and figure out problem solving, expand on previous ideas.
Yeah. I suppose the dream experiment, anyways, you'd have to, once you got to the point where you were fairly certain you could, you'd have to pick something to focus on, which I guess goes without saying. But
Well,
I don't know what you would use that for, unless you were already in.
A programmer or coder could do it, or some sort of mathematician, scientist.
Yeah.
Say you're an architect or an engineer. You can draw blueprints in your sleep and then remember them and wake up and just put them into life. Say you're any sort of politician or any sort of philosopher or anything like that could just think about just ideas in their sleep, like, and expand on them and broaden them, and just you would have total thought for what, at least 6, 8, 10 hours. Just complete control of your thought, and you can just think and think and think and expand on things. That's a lot of time to just figure stuff out in your own mind.
Yeah.
Even if you're only everybody could use it. And even if you're only working on like something like your own personal character, or you know, trying to understand just an everyday problem in your life. But I think that would take away from a lot of anxiety too, because you don't have to worry about it in the day. You can just say, oh, well, I'll think about it when I go to sleep.
Hypothetically, there's a whole school of dream interpretation that I'm not really all that privy to, but the idea is something along the lines of your dreams are an abstract of that already. Your observation of the reality around you.
Yeah, so if you can control that and harness it, there's no telling what that could do and what other things that could unlock in your mind and how a person could progress. You know, we can make great strides while we're awake already, but we're already busy while we're awake. Time is something we don't have a lot of. So if you could expand that to cover 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, if you
effectively
will
double
it,
your life expectancy.
yeah, you could do so much more with your life than what we do now. Which would only further people's intelligence, it would only progress humanity. And if you're doubling it to every person, you're only going to throw progression ahead at least twice as fast.
Yeah, potentially.
I'm not a mathematician, so I don't know if you would put everybody in the world and then multiply that by 2 and that would be your progression increase, or if you would fucking do it as an individual, so it would only be times 2, you know, whatever. But whatever it is, either way, it's still huge. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to imagine how much, at least if we doubled our progression, how much that would go. Like how far that would go. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. Anybody can imagine that.
Fair. You'd have to have honest thought, though, too.
Like if you move twice as fast trying to solve world hunger, you move twice as fast on a cure for cancer, you move twice as fast trying to figure out a fair system for everyone to live in where everyone can thrive and there's still freedoms. Yeah, that would be insane.
Well, like every zealot, I think I already have the answer.
What would your answer be? I gotta know.
I already alluded to it. It's the absolving the legal framework and raising the heights of our rights to be the code at which everybody stands. You wouldn't need... See, without laws, a jury would work, in my opinion, properly, since this is whatever the ideas that I espouse. You wouldn't have... The code is strictly this, so it has to be one of these punishments within this framework for the crime that has been placed in this category. The jury would be strictly based on all the individual details. The only laws would be rights or foreign policy.
You'd have to get everybody on board with that, though. That's what I think.
Well, I think they already are.
They aren't the same.
I think I don't know. I think everything really starts with the individual. Like I think cleaning up the streets is not the government's job. It's not the police's job. It's our job.
Yeah.
You know, like if fucking crack house moves into your neighborhood, you go over there, you tell them get the fuck out. You know, as a
Or
fucking
you help them out.
or you help them out. Yeah. What the fuck?
But I mean, either way, yes, I agree.
But yeah, it comes down to the individual. You can't allow that shit to happen. If everybody wants a better world and they all want things to be better, then everybody has to fucking clean shit up on their own. It starts right at home.
Personal integrity.
Personal integrity, morals, everything we've been talking about this whole time. And if you want to keep your freedoms, it comes down to you, because they're only going to constrict more and more and more. And the people in government, that's why we need a reform. The fact that they even have the power to constrict and constrict and constrict is ridiculous. We've seen time and time again what happens throughout history. The French Revolution, King Louis dragged him through the streets, him and his family, chopped their heads off with the guillotine. Mussolini, Italy, World War II.
They drew and quartered him, right?
They fucking dragged him through the streets by his fucking dick, dude, and hung him in the square.
That's fantastic. Oh, I thought he was drawn and quartered.
They drug him through the streets. They killed him. That's people are like there's a lot of people are just to the point where they're like, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. We want something different. I want something different. I wouldn't want it to come to that. I mean, it's gonna be just fucking chaos. Just chaos. That gives our enemies, other countries, other people, believe it or not, China is fucking terrible for us. Russia.
Well, that goes back to what I said earlier, at least I think it does, I think the civil solution to that is the abandoning of political ideology. A compromise between the parties is a surrender by the people in every instance.
I think it just needs to be. There needs to be individuals. Somebody needs to stand up and say enough is enough, and just run on what they believe. And They can't be a crook. You need an honest person to just step up and be backed by the people. Somebody with integrity, somebody that's... We've had presidents like that. Teddy Roosevelt. Love Teddy Roosevelt. Man of total integrity. Busted up monopolies, gave rights to the workers. So I don't agree with this. Rain on a third party. Teddy Roosevelt was all about freedom and America and what America is really supposed to stand for. Freedom and equality for everybody. But at the same time, it's supposed to be a land of opportunity where anyone can thrive. Which, like...
Well, you say that as though they're in opposition. I think it's ironic that our founding needed is liberty, but those two things are ideally one and the same. If you are free, you have the opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm saying it's like a free market. Like, the only reason a free market doesn't work now is because of corporations constricting them.
Well, it's been partially socialized, yeah.
Yeah, and they're essentially, corporations are essentially found a loophole in monopolizing businesses like Walmart, Amazon, Silicon Valley. That's why Silicon Valley is under huge scrutiny.
Yeah, well, as long as they pay homage to the biggest monopoly, the Fed, then they're okay.
Yeah, it all needs to be. That's why it needs somebody honest in there. We've had presidents like that. I mean, I even think Kennedy, for what it's worth, he had his political scandals, but I think towards the end he felt real guilty about it, and that's what he was just gonna bust everything up and expose it. Like the mafia put him into power, and then he put his brother as attorney general. And went after the same people that put him in power and tried arresting all of them. No, I think that's why he was killed, though. He's an honest guy. He started to feel bad and he was throwing everything out there. Trying to do the right thing.
It's been a long time since I listened to his last speech, but
I'm a huge Kennedy fan. I've read his book, Profiles in Courage, and listened to his speeches. He's a very charismatic guy. That's what we need, is somebody with charisma. That's the one thing I've noticed about all these past leaders is like Barack Obama had some charisma, but at the same time, other world leaders just viewed him as a pushover. Like Putin especially was like, Obama's a fucking pushover. So it's like, Snowden, you can stay. Fuck Obama. He just made him look like he's not an alpha male. He doesn't have that masculinity. And then you got Trump, where he is kind of an alpha male, but he's
bombastic as
he says stupid shit. He's not very charismatic at all. You know, if you listen to him talk, that's a big turnoff for him to a lot of people. The way he talks, like, I don't want to listen to that. You need somebody with charisma, a strong man or woman, and they have to be honest. People got to back them.
Well, obviously, for the sake of the vote, yeah, you want charisma, because otherwise you're just not going to vote for him, probably. But it'd be lovely to get to a point where the only thing we looked at was the personal integrity of the candidate. It's the only thing that should qualify or disqualify any candidate for any public office.
Well, charisma goes into more than just getting a vote. Charisma goes into swaying Congress and the Senate. Charisma goes into swaying other world leaders. Charisma is a sign of intelligence. Charisma is very, very important, I think. But honestly, like, it's like a stupid example, but like, I play Fallout. A lot of the times, I wouldn't even up my other skills. I just put my charisma at 10. Because then I could just talk everybody into whatever the fuck I wanted to. And I wouldn't need to be strong. And I wouldn't need to be smart. And I wouldn't need to do anything else. I could just talk them into it. Charisma is very, very, very important. People don't want to listen to just blah 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 blah. You know, they want to be entertained. People like that. That's why Hitler rose to power. People would listen to his speeches, I think, for like 1, 2, 3 days straight. And he would just talk and talk and talk, and there was thousands and thousands of people listening. You can do anything with a voice.
The human world, like physics, can be reduced to 4 fundamental forces: culture, politics, war, and business.
All of which charisma is a huge factor in. You have to be able to speak intelligently. You have to be able to get people's attention. And they have to be interested. If they're not interested, they're not going to. Because most people, it goes down to intelligence. We could get to a point where charisma wouldn't matter as much, but charisma.
And that would be a beautiful world. I think that's the problem. Is
everyone needs to have like an equal level of intelligence at that point. It needs to be where they can understand everything that's being said. It's not like, oh, I like this guy, I like the way he talks, you know, blah 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 blah. It's okay, I hear what he's saying, I understand it, and I support it. A lot of people will just say, oh yeah, that guy talks, you know, I like the way he speaks, I like the way he talks. I'm gonna listen to him. And there's a lot of stuff too that I listen to, and it's like I got to try to listen to like a lot of podcasts. So like I don't really care what they're talking about because it's just boring to my ears, you know.
yeah, I have encountered that. But
You just turn it off. You're like, whatever, you know. It's
I've always attributed that to a character flaw of my own.
probably is, but until we get past that, that's what we need.
Isn't that a utopian view, though? That's my question.
I suppose.
I think the utopian view would be a world where you don't need that. That would be the utopian view. That would be the perfect, you know. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, though.
As is mine. And that's actually a great thing. Another piece of my whole understanding of the Christian dialogue that I mentioned earlier is perfection. You're right, perfection is impossible, and that's why it's a great thing to strive for. Because if you do that, you will never stop improving.
Yeah, that's part of competition, too.
Yeah.
Why we need competition.
Yes.
You have to have it. I wouldn't be the man I am today without competition. I always strive to compete with everything and everyone. If you want to be the best, you have to compete. Why wouldn't you want to be the best at everything? I don't understand why people are just like, fuck it. Like, no, just keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying. It doesn't. Why wouldn't you do that? You only get so much time. People just want to. Some people just don't care, and I don't get the lack of caring. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Apathy. Apathy is the biggest weapon the government uses against us.
Yeah, ignorance. There's a lot of ignorance. So if everybody was the best person they could be and did the best at everything would just improve all over the place.
Well, fair enough, but we have to attempt to strive for that perfection.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the core of what we've been talking about, bouncing around with what we have. And I'd say the other thing that goes hand in hand with weaponized apathy, like you mentioned, is cynicism, the doubt in your fellow man, and that is played up to no end.
The
I would definitely agree.
American dream is the ideal at which equality of opportunity is available to any American, allowing the highest aspiration and goals to be achieved through competition.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, competition is definitely necessary. If there wasn't competition, you wouldn't have good music. You wouldn't have beautiful art. You wouldn't have good food. You
wouldn't have more food. You wouldn't have efficiency. But that's the other deadly flaw and why communism killed so many people, is the lack of that very thing. Without competition, every aspect of your society stagnates.
yeah, for sure.
Darwinism. It's
Full
just
circle.
survival of the fittest, man.
Fuck Charles Darwin. But I think we're gonna leave it off there. Thanks for staying tuned, everybody. I'll
Yeah.
see you next time. Good talking to you, buddy.
Yeah.
And I'll catch you later.
Thanks for having me.